There is an emergency at the level of the ongoing conflicts between Russia and Ukraine right now. I hope that the United Nations Security Council can find a common ground of understanding regarding the matter and bring a status quo at least to an enduring conflict outside of the specific issue of the plant itself. Yes, we had Hiroshima and Nagasaki 77 years ago. Since the extinctions of the dinosaurs, Earth was never threatened by annihilation, even during the Great Ice Ages. I suspended my participation at the NPT review conference right now in order to focus regarding this pressing matter. In the United States, I heard from John Brennan, who was at the CIA, in order to understand from a counterterrorism perspective on how to handle classified documents regarding this issue of nuclear that includes the special access programs, the SAPs, as well as the top secrets. I have no further comment to make otherwise. Staying focused on governance at the level of Washington, D.C., including the federal work with the CIA and the FBI. The 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly will be important for future events of the world. We are already on its context, as I have mentioned during my previous video earlier this month. And besides the NPT Review Conference and the activities of the United Nations Security Council until the UNGA begins, first under the presidency of the People's Republic of China currently, and the one of France after it in September. There are also issues of counterterrorism that I may discuss in the same meantime, and that starts with the commemoration of the International Day of Remembrance and tribute to the victims of terrorism. As we know, acts of terrorism propagating a wide range of hateful ideologies continue to injure, harm, and kill thousands of innocent people each year. Despite international condemnation of terrorism, victims often struggle to have their voices heard, their needs supported, and their rights upheld. They often feel forgotten and neglected once the immediate aftermath of a terrorist attack fades, with profound consequences for them. Few member states have the resources or the capacity to fulfill the medium and long-term needs of victims to enable them to fully recover, rehabilitate, and reintegrate into society. Most victims indeed can only recover and cope with their trauma through long-term multidimensional support, including physical, psychological, social, and financial. So we have to understand from this perspective the approach of the member states when it comes to the primary responsibility in order to support victims of terrorism and uphold their rights. At the level of the UN, there is a role in supporting the member states to implement the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy by standing in solidarity and providing support to victims of terrorism, offering capacity building assistance, establishing networks, and offering support to organizations, particularly victims associations, and encouraging member states to promote, protect, and respect the rights of victims of terrorism. With donors support, the United Nations provides technical assistance and capacity building to member states and victims associations to better address the needs of victims of terrorism. So getting back to the background of this context of action, to understand it, we have to go back to Resolution 72165 of 2017, where the General Assembly established the International Day of Remembrance of and tribute to the victims of terrorism to be commemorated annually on August 21st in order to honor and support the victims and survivors of terrorism and to promote and protect the full enjoyment of their fundamental freedoms. In April 2020, mandated by General Assembly Resolution 73305, the United Nations Secretary General published his reports on the progress of the UN system to support member states in assisting victims of terrorism Resolution 74790, which calls for the enhancement of international cooperation to assist victims of terrorism. The last four outcome resolution of the review of counterterrorism global strategy related to that, the resolution 66282, 68276, 72284, 75291. They have emphasized the important role of victims of terrorism in countering terrorism, promoting international solidarity, preventing violent extremism, recognizing and upholding the distinct needs while supporting them as well. Since the sixth review of the strategy in 2018, developments at the international, regional, and national levels have increasingly demonstrated that support to victims has moved beyond symbolic solidarity towards a more robust engagement to advance their rights and needs in so many member states. This is reflected in the establishment in 2009 of a group of Friends of Victims of Terrorism, co-chaired by the Permanent Representative of Iraq and Spain to the United Nations, and General Assembly Resolution 73305 on the enhancement of international cooperation to assist victims of terrorism. The seventh review resolution adopted on June 30, 2009, the resolution 75291, notes the importance of upholding the rights and supporting the needs of victims of terrorism, in particular of women, children, and those affected by sexual and gender-based violence committed by terrorists. It encourages all member states to develop national comprehensive assistance plans for victims of terrorism and their families to address the immediate, short, and long-term needs of victims of terrorism. The resolution further welcomes the first Global Congress of Victims of Terrorism, which will be held in September 2022 this year at the United Nations headquarters, and encourage the UN Office of Counterterrorism through the Global Victims of Terrorism to support the program of the United Nations Victims of Terrorism Support Portal to continue raise the awareness on victims of terrorism and the promotion and protection of their rights. This includes further strengthening the capacity of and providing technical assistance to member states in order to assist victims of terrorism and strengthen their engagement with relevant private sector organizations, which can play a valuable role in assisting and supporting the victims of terrorism. The Global Congress will promote dialogue between member states, victims of terrorism, academia, and the private sector on the importance of upholding the rights and supporting the needs of victims of terrorism. Getting back to the United States, for US politics, rebuilding without animosity and slowly but surely in this context of action is a must. We talk about this all the time lately, me and my close contacts. So seeing what could be achievable, and this is in the long term, a very long work, like I said, around the original hurdles additionally to the one that were added by the modern bacteriological war. I am reviewing the issue of Israel and Palestine as well this month. Regarding the issues related to Korean Peninsula, I am happy regarding the will of moving forward. I just posted a picture of an event that I had at the Republic of Korea's mission to the United Nations a few years ago, and still focusing on the counterterrorism regional strategy of the country, starting from strategic points: Seoul, Ulsan, Busan, Incheon, Gwangju, Daegu, as well as Pyeongchang and Seogwipo and other parts of the country. Regarding the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, I am very delighted that Pyongyang hosted in April 2019 the International Conference on Finance. Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un has known how to lead the country by preserving its history and also by accommodating it to the development of the world. In addition to that, the DPRK is involved on several socio-economic programs at the level of the UN in order to participate to global challenges. The issue that we have right now is not related to other countries. That problem that is basically enduring is coming from this problem oriented lifestyle in the United States, and this is something that basically has to be worked on. It's not about targeting a specific system. This is concerning the United States because this does not exist in the United Kingdom, nor in Australia or New Zealand, and not even in Canada, that is the neighboring country of the US.